just like to see George, wherever he goes, be somewhere where he can really continue to shed light on things in the community and the world that need to be improved. I think he was the biggest factor in 2020, besides Corona, that made people stop and think if they were really going to have an opportunity to live out their lives.
Our young generation is clearly lost, man. Clearly lost, man. Like, I don't even know what to say no more, man. Like, you youngsters just going around, just busting guns in crowds, kids getting killed, you know, and it's clearly the generation after us, man, that's so lost, man.
So many times that we have not gotten justice. This is one time in our entire history where we actually follow the trial. I remember when I heard the verdict, I was actually at the NAACP Houston branch. I think they caught it on camera and in the Houston Chronicle, I and the executive director and the president. And it was just something that you really, really shouted about. But we know that we have so far to go. But certainly you have to start with one step. And this is a giant step. They said it about the Apollo or something, but this is a giant step for mankind and for race relations.
God works in mysterious ways. And sometimes he takes ordinary people and does extraordinary things with them. So imagine how, out of all of the unfortunate killings of black people, African Americans in particular by this country, from the hands of police, this one captured not just the world stage, but the international stage.
The making of George. George P. Floyd, referred to as Perry by his friends and family, is gone too soon. A man whose complicated life and its final moments sparked a global movement. With a surgeon's precision, the sculptors continue to work on bringing this now icon to life. The love of her craft and training began many years ago. This beautiful bronze art piece is slated to be installed in Tom Bass Park, gifted by Kay Davis, a light in the community, and presented to Harris County Precinct 1, led by Commissioner Rodney Ellis. It is the hope that this art piece becomes a positive symbol for race relations in this country and beyond.
That's right, Daddy changed the world. Wait, we don't.
She did what?
Daddy changed the world.
Daddy changed the world.
Since his passing, never in a million years would I have thought that his death would have this kind of an impact on the world at large. Gianna said her daddy changed the world, and I absolutely echo those sentiments. I didn't know that in the beginning, but it was pretty evident, like within weeks after his death.
But when you make a face, I have a skull at home, and then I went over pictures of the skull, and I said, well, his face is like this, and then I did different things. I said, this is not matching. I make the lips separately, and I tried to I said, this is the size of his lips. They don't fit. I said, why? Why don't his lips fit? Because it's all usually measurements. And I found out his lips didn't fit because he had an underbite. So I had to cut the jaw, pull it out, and the lips fit. I said, oh.
A number of changes that we saw, like immediately from the protest all over the world, from the changing of the names of buildings and scholarships in his honor, just the number of things that we've never seen happen before. We've had countless number of African American men murdered by the police. We didn't see anybody being charged. We certainly didn't see anybody being convicted and sentenced. And then to see the legislative changes that have been put on the books from the local standpoint, we've had some changes. Statewide, we have House Bill 88, and then on the federal level, the George Floyd Policing Act. So I definitely feel like now that there's been some changes, and I think there's a lot more to come.
George Floyd's life, it touched everyone, no matter your color, your creed, or whatever your religion. His life, the way his life was taken, it touched everyone. And so when we talk about legislation and funding from a state level or even a federal level, we have got to connect with these types of monuments that will transcend time and will be a big part of our history that we cannot erase, that we should never erase, and that we should find comfort in talking about it, because it's through these types of actions, through these types of conversations, that we can bring about the change we must see in the world to make it better for all of us.
We just thought that, I didn't really know what exactly to expect, except that we wanted your buy-in. That was important to her. You know, she's walked me through the process, because she's been doing this a long time, and she said it's important what that family thinks, because I don't care who's paying for it. That's his family. You know, I'm a king's kid. That's why I said George was a king's kid. And at the end of the day, God will have the last word. I don't care how you fashion it, it'll work out.
From that little boy in the projects to the man who changed the world through the tragic loss of his life, we now commemorate that sacrifice with an everlasting symbol of justice, reform, and remembrance.
My name is Dr. Waynell Sexton, and I taught for 27 years, public school. 24 of those years were in 3rd Ward, Texas, at Frederick Douglass Elementary. One of my more specific memories involves Perry's report for Black History Month. Each day during Black History Month, we studied a different famous Black American. And as a culmination of the study, I would ask the students, how will you impact the future? What are you going to do to make a difference? And in response, each student wrote an essay about their future aspirations. And Perry was particularly impressed by Thurgood Marshall and his fight for justice for Black Americans.
This is what my dad wrote. When I grow up, I want to be a Supreme Court judge. When people say your honor, he did rob the bank. I will say, be seated, and if he doesn't, I will tell the guard to take him out. Then I will beat my hammer on the desk. Then everybody will be quiet. The end.
It's been 40 years, and I've taught many, many students since then. But I do remember that he was a good boy. He loved to play. He was tall and lanky, even in 2nd grade.
And then as I look back, I found out he'd been that person since, I guess, 7 years old? I have to ask why his teacher kept a paper he wrote when he was 7 years old till his death.
Many people question why I've held on to these books from the children for such a long time. It's been over 40 years since I taught Perry, and I have some books even from 10 years before that. For one thing, I love teaching. I never wanted to be a teacher, but once I became a teacher, I absolutely just knew that I'd found my calling.
I doubt if any of my teachers have any of mine, right? But then as I got to know his family and his friends, and they shared, I said, gee whiz, we looked at his career, and I don't know about you, but being a double letterman in high school was a big thing when you're in high school, and so they speak of him with such love, and they talked about him going back in the community and doing the thing. In other words, as I start to learn about him, I realized that this is worth really taking a look at, not only exploring, but then sharing.
This wasn't the first time that Perry wrote this paper. I talked with him about it, we made corrections. I probably had him do it 2 or 3 times until the handwriting was just right, until he had said just the things that he wanted to say in that paper. And of course, back in the day, and possibly even still today, one of our big thrusts was creating books for the boys and girls to actually read in the classroom and to have as their own. The fact that I was able to put my hands on it so quickly, I feel like was really a God thing. I feel like God just directed my hands in the attic right. It was one of the first books that I found, and I opened it up, and there was Perry's essay.
It is said that our dreams are important because they position us for success, whether large or small. Then choice and consequence sets up the path of destiny. But fate sometimes entangles and intertwines, carves out the path we ultimately travel. Perry had his dreams, but sometimes the journey is the destination.
My name is Gianna Floyd, and what I would like to be is a real estate and a court judge. The reason why is I want to help the nice people and give them a home and make it good for those kids who doesn't have. And also, I did this project about Michelle Obama because she changed the school menus. I would like to be her one day, and not definitely like her, but just like being myself. And I'm definitely going to be like her when I grow up. I'm going to be the world's best president. Maybe people can vote for me one day, and I can be a president. And I want to be a judge when I grow up too.
Gianna had dreams just like her father, as do children around the world. To understand the true power of this bronze piece, we need to know the man and understand his backstory. Who is George P. Floyd, and why is the name so popular?
He was just, he was an awesome kid. And when he started talking a little bit, whatever, now he was so smart. He could pick up on stuff just like that. He could pick it up on just like that, And if he saw me crying or Jaja crying, he'd bow up like, who did it? And he was a little boy. He was always there. If you knew about it as a kid, because as a kid it was just me and Jaja, Philonis, Rodney, they came along when we moved to Houston. It was the three amigos.
Yeah, it's my partner, know what I'm saying, He used to call me Yano. I call him Judgy. You know what I'm saying? We grew up together in the neighborhood, spent the night at his mama's house, fried chicken, you know what I'm saying? Washed out t-shirts, everything. My partner, man, he just played basketball from middle school to high school. Fought together, ran the streets together. I'm talking about everything. Ate cereal out the same bowl. That's my partner. I miss him. From the CUNY homes.
Life is full of twists and turns, and we certainly have our human flaws and struggles.
He was just he was so awesome as a kid. He just, and me and him was very, very, very close, I know they say they look alike and whatever, but we were very close.
We are sometimes ordinary people, tasked with doing extraordinary things. The heavy lifting, difference-making, and mind-blowing work. Sometimes the ultimate sacrifice.
George Floyd, man, Perry Floyd, has always been an engaging figure in the community, in the Third Ward community, at Jack Yates High School, in Third Ward, in particular the CUNY homes. But, he still was a prominent figure at Yates as it relates to just being this big, tall figure, also, playing basketball, football, being an athlete. But he was just a cool dude, just all around, just a gentle giant, and just thinking about, one instance, after he was, really kind of changing his life or whatever. I used to be a part of this ministry called Inner City Youth that I used to help with my friend Prince Kuznard and his wife Sheila. And they used to do a lot of ministry work at the CUNY homes, but I know that there was a church that Perry was a part of, at the CUNY homes, and they used to have church service on the basketball court. And I remember him, dragging out the tub to actually get people baptized, kids and other people in the community. But he was all around good dude, man. Just so unfortunate what happened to him. He left here, going to Minnesota, trying to change his life, better his life. And as we know now, what happened on Memorial Day is just forever seared in my mind and in the minds of this entire world.
And I always think about he actually walked the same halls that I did, had the same teachers, lived in the same environment. So this really, really means a lot to me personally, as well as to my district, because I still see the people who are in need of an equitable opportunity. And I believe that that is what he stands for.
It was beautiful and exciting to see people uniting around the world. Nation building a movement, social justice and reform were finally on the agenda. We were using higher level thinking and having hard conversations to rescue us from ourselves and doing relevant work. To understand the power of this symbolism, you need to understand why this incident created a change, which should be called the George Floyd effect. On May 25th, 2020, we felt a systemic shift. Imagine a tectonic plate actually moving under your feet. A wise person said, if we don't learn from mistakes, we're destined to repeat them. So we want to remember forever.
You know, I wanted to share with the rest of the world what I learned and what it told me about who he must have been. Somebody, I guess, whose life story we may not have even examined had he not died, had it not happened, but it did. And I think, I don't know, maybe looking into his life allows us to look into those kinds of situations and the everyday situation where these things happen at the person. So we start looking at the person. I don't know, it struck me. I guess I consider myself a little spiritual. So kind of moved my soul. So, and when things touch me like that, I feel moved to respond. So that's what I did.
Because everybody gets to see my dad and stuff. I think the statue is wonderful. It's at the park. I've never been there before, but I think it's going to be really good. I think it will be able for all people to remember him. Everyone would like sitting at the table with George.
You know, when you think about what you've done or who you are, you think about what you've done. And I think most of the statues that I've done have been controversial pieces. I've done bronze. I did a statue of Jack Johnson, who was in his day persecuted and God knows what else. They said he was killed on the highway coming back from France to see his mother in a traffic accident.
You asked me why did I want to do the piece about George, or why I want to look into his life. It was because the spark. Let's call it the spark. There was a spark. And it caught fire. How about that? It was a spark, caught my attention, and it's a flame. So that's what George is. He'll be a flame. He'll be a living flame.
We're trying to do something to uplift our community, trying to better our community, trying to reach our community, our kids, our youth, trying to avoid situations like what happened to George from happening ever again. And so, you know, for me, you know, those challenges I looked at as opportunities. Of course, we saw them. We tried to work with the necessary entities or whatever, but, you know, it just didn't work. And it clearly it wasn't meant to be, you know, with them, you know, but it is where it needs to be now. And so I'm excited to see its upcoming location. I think it's going to get so many visitors' eyes, and you know, it's going to do exactly what it set out to do, and that is to make a difference and change the world. As George's daughter said, you know, he changed the world, and through doing this sculpture and having it where it is, it's going to change the lives of so many others, whether they live in the Houston area or not. It's going to impact everybody.
I just think 100 years from now, there'll be other little black boys and girls and white ones and Hispanics who will look at that statue and they will say, who is he and what did he do? And it will inspire them when they know the story of George Floyd and how his life impacted so many people, not just in this country, but around the world. It focused the attention worldwide on issues of equity, issues of race and class that were just shoved under the rug. You know, as I told his brother not too long ago, when that officer put his foot on George Floyd's neck, there were a lot of things already under that foot that we just didn't talk about, in addition to George Floyd's neck. So this statue, this will be your way of making the case that we're better than what happened to George Floyd. So that's why at Precinct 1 we were glad to do this, to help you and to also pay homage to George Floyd's family and the legacy of Mr. Floyd.
This statue will tell a story, and it's not one that necessarily has to be in the classroom, but that statue will be standing there telling a story that no one can deny.
Sometimes we ask ourselves, why do we go through this process of putting up statues and monuments and putting names on buildings? I think you do that because you believe in what somebody stood for, not because you knew them, or not because they live in your neighborhood or grew up near you, but you do it because you want us to pay homage, to respect that person, to serve as a role, to inspire us, to be a role model. And George Floyd, I mean, you just imagine, he's a kid growing up in the projects in Houston, Texas, facing so many challenges that so many young black kids face even today. For his life to end up creating a catalytic impact around the globe. People taking down monuments of racist people who enslaved others all over the world. I mean, it was something unique about his case. You know, I remember at the funeral when Reverend Sharpton said, sometimes God takes ordinary people. That's what he had here. An ordinary human being whose life ended so young because the system, not just that officer, the system had its foot on his neck. And because we saw visually the impact of that, it was just a resounding shout across the planet. This case, there's so many others. You can go through the names, Breonna Taylor, Arbery, just keep going. But this particular case, God chose this individual to spark a light. You seeing it now, some of the backlash as crime goes up. People wanted to stop that movement towards responsible criminal justice reform in any way they could.
A wise person said, if we don't learn from mistakes, we're destined to repeat them. So we want to remember forever.
They go out there, they'll reflect. And when you said giving you a place to go so you can be reminded of who you are and where you came from and what you're about, Adrian, how many conversations did we have about what that statue would do? That's why we named it A Conversation with George.